We're ready to get going with our keynote address here at lunch. Hopefully all y'all enjoyed the breakout sessions. You enjoyed the resource providers. I was very pleased to walk down the concourse and see all the tables and see all the people standing in front of the tables. That's a great thing to see. It means that we had the right people there and appreciate that y'all engaged. I thought it was a good session. So now I get to introduce our keynote speaker, and I have a long intro here. But good thing is I know Rob Matwick very well. So he's our Senior VP of Baseball, or Senior VP of Operations for the Texas Rangers, Business Operations. So Rob has been in baseball for 38 years. A long part of that time was actually with the team to the south, whose name I won't mention. Not here. I had to put up with them right before the All-Star break because we played them. But he spent many years there, and he's been with the Rangers for about 15 years, I think, is about right. But the cool thing about Rob is everything you see around you, this ballpark, the Lowe's Hotel, the Texas Live, the new Live by Lowe's Hotel, some other development that's going on, Rob is the person who's in charge with managing all of that for the Rangers. So when it came time to build a new ballpark, the person who negotiated that master agreement for the Rangers was Rob. Rob has a great job, and he takes it really seriously. He's on the board of our chamber. He's chairman of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. He's actively involved in the community. He's passionate about Arlington. He's passionate about small businesses, and he set up programs, which I'm sure he might touch on, that helps local businesses have the opportunity to benefit by ball games and things that take place here. He's just a tremendous advocate for Arlington, for the whole North Texas region. With that, I'll bring up Rob Matwick.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we today? Okay. Everybody doing okay? I apologize for not wearing a suit today. Normally, I would suit up for an event like this, but with the temperature being what it is outside a little bit, I thought it might be okay. Hopefully it's okay with the governor and the governor's office, but thank you all for indulging me. I spent 5 of the last 6 days in Seattle for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. As you may or may not have heard, we will be hosting that event here out on this field on July 16th of next year, so we're very excited about that. A little event called the World Cup. Maybe have a few games across the street there in 2026, but as you can imagine, we like to keep things active here in the entertainment district. So anybody here for the first time that have been in this building, just raise your hand. Wow, okay. I'm glad to know that. You know, we always assume that everybody has always been here. You know, we've been in the building now since 2020, and we always assume that people have been in the ballpark. But one of the neat things about this building is our ability to do events like this. One of the driving forces behind every design element that we put into the building was how can we make this functional 365 days a year and open the building to a much wider audience than, you know, we wouldn't be having this event across the street at Choctaw Stadium today, at least not outside. You know, we had a few club spaces in there, but hopefully you saw today a couple of the different hospitality areas that we have, and we really like this space, our market space here, to use for breakfast, lunch, dinner, events like this. So a lot of thought, a lot of intent went into this. But so I just wanted to run through a little bit and talk about the entertainment district in general and sort of how we got here. So I'm going to roll through some slides. I'm hoping you can see these. Can you, the first one up? There we go. So the Marquee of Texas, I love this expression. And actually I will credit Governor Abbott for calling Arlington the Marquee of Texas. I think is when we announced the Lowe's Arlington project in the new convention center that the governor was so impressed with the things that we were doing here that, you know, he crowned us unofficially the Marquee. So we're proud to carry that mantle. And tourism is very important for what we do here in our community. So as Michael mentioned, I'm proud to serve as the chairman of our Convention and Visitors Bureau in addition to being on the chamber board. So it gives me an opportunity to interact with a lot of small business owners in our community, a lot of our elected officials, and represent our organization. So, but when we talk about tourism, we just had a study done last year. Longwoods here is a pretty reputable source for CVBs to try to determine, how many people we have visiting. So for 2022, our market improved by about 6.6%. So 15.1 million people visited Arlington in 2022. And those 15.1 million people represented $2.6 billion in economic impact to this community. So pretty interesting when you take a look at those numbers and where we've come from. So of that 15.1 million, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of numbers here, but I did want to hit on a couple of these because they're pretty impressive. 8.3 million were overnight visitors, and that's a reason that you see that big new hotel going up across the street. Sure, it's to support events, special events, but we're confident that the meeting business and the convention business is going to be coming back. So these overnight visitors, as you can see, are critically important to our success here. So there's a little graphic down there in the bottom. It sort of shows quarters of the year, and Arlington's pretty consistent. So for those overnight visitors, we tend to get 22% first quarter of the year, and that's when it's a little cool here. Six Flags is not open yet. That's probably not unusual for us. But then the balance of the year, we're pretty much straight through 26%. So from April through December, when we're up and running with baseball, Six Flags, Hurricane Harbor, and then into football season in the fall, and Big 12 championship and all those things, we're pretty consistent across that at 26%. So that overnight visitor, that $2.6 billion we spent, more than $2 billion comes from the overnight visitor. So that's critically important to everything we do here. Lodging, restaurant, retail, all those sectors are impacted by those overnight guests. And on average, those overnight consumers spend about $250 per person on that overnight trip. The day trip is about 6.8 million, and think about it yourself. If you're coming here to visit Six Flags, if you're coming to a ball game, maybe you're just coming in for the day, and we still get a lot of that business here in Arlington. That represented about 6.8 million of the 15.1. Same thing, it starts a little slow, January to March for the day visitors, tends to go up April through August, and then when we go back into school in the last quarter of the year, we get on to about 24%, but pretty consistent business for us over the course of the year. Biggest difference between, the overnight visitor and the day visitor is, the day visitor's not going to spend on lodging, and they're going to spend about $81 a day again, on retail, restaurant, and those type things, minus the lodging. So lodging obviously is a pretty significant piece of that equation for us. This is one other study we had done. This is interesting to me because and I'm going to use one slide out of this deck. There's a group called Tourism Economics, and they did this study actually in 2021. So think about that, coming out of COVID. So we have there are two different organizations do these studies for us, but this one was coming out of COVID in 21. And it's impossible to read those slides, so I'm going to read them for you. There's 4 little boxes on that page. Coming out of COVID, that visitor spending was $1.1 billion in 21. So think about that. From 21 to 22, that spending grew from 1.1 to 2.6. Pretty amazing. They had some interesting numbers behind that too. Labor income, and again, this is based on that 21 number, was $486 million tied to, that revenue generation of the $1.1 billion. So you can imagine the $2.6 billion in 22, how much greater that labor revenue was. Total jobs, this study in 21 estimated about 1 of every 13 jobs in Arlington is tourism related. So when you talk about critical importance here to our community, tourism certainly delivers on that. And then there was a reference to state and local tax dollars. In 21, it generated about $97 million. So of the $2.6 billion spend, you can imagine how much greater that taxable revenue was to the city, city and the state. It was estimated about, that 97 million state and local taxes generated by tourism would cover $717 of the annual state and local tax bill for Arlington households. And again, that's based on 1.1 billion. So it's a pretty interesting study. Our CBB has these things posted if you have interest in numbers. I'm going to move on and talk a little bit more about the transformation here in Arlington. So everything you see here today didn't exist about 8 years ago. Actually, a little bit less than that because by the time we started construction. So I love this visual. This is 2012, an aerial image of what this area looked like. You look over in the left corner there, you can see maybe the edge of AT&T Stadium. You see Globe Life Park, our former home, now Choctaw Stadium across the street. And then there's this sort of funny collection of white tents down in the bottom left. So in 2012, in January, we have a group called Rangers Events, and some of our staff is running around here today. They're the people that help to organize these things. We actually got the Dallas-Fort Worth Boat Show to come to Arlington. But because we didn't have facilities like this one, we literally did the boat show on a parking lot, which is actually this area right outside the windows here. We created those giant tents. We had about 80,000 square feet of internal space in January, February, and we had everything from yachts to rowboats. And that was really our first venture into the event business on a major scale. At that time, that department was 4 people. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that evolution. So when you talk about a small business, we had a group of 4, and their job was to go out and try to compete with, at that time, AT&T Stadium for events, right? And we had to do it in a building that was basically an outdoor building over there. So going was pretty tough in 2012, but this was really the first big venture that made it work. But as we fast forward a little bit toward 2015, you're familiar with the Texas Live facility over here out on our plaza just to the north of us. You know, the Rangers got into discussions with the Cordish family about bringing that concept here to Arlington. So that 100,000 square foot venue that exists out there today was actually a catalyst that I think really embraced the Rangers, Cordish companies, and the city of Arlington, who was a key player. And at that time, Mayor Jeff Williams had the foresight and the vision, along with our ownership, after a couple of starts and stops here in the district, to get development going. In fact, when we were in the room, I was in our majority owner, Ray Davis, and Blake Cordish, as we were trying to negotiate this deal. And Mr. Davis made clear to Blake, he said, Blake, you have to understand, our lease on the old ballpark at that time was up in 2024. So technically that lease was still going. So he said, we may or may not be here at that time. But Cordish was committed to trying to get something done here in Arlington. They believed in the market. They believed in the proximity between the 2 stadiums. Most importantly, they believed in the community and the civic leadership here, city manager and the mayor's office. So we were able to sort of jumpstart those discussions. City stepped forward and we said, well, you know, we're not going to build Texas Live. We're not going to build this Live by Lowe's hotel and not have the Rangers here. So obviously in 2016, and Michael knows this very well since he helped lead the Vote Yes campaign here, you know, we got on the ballot and got the ballpark approved, and by a 60-40 margin, and then we started to move things forward. So Texas Live was really the first piece. 100,000 square feet. It opened in August of 2018. Been a fantastic venue for us. You know, for years we tried to figure out how we could get people to come early and stay late, just extend the stay. And as I mentioned with Mayor Williams, he wasn't satisfied at that time, and I know Michael wasn't either, with just Texas Live. But the city was able to actually jumpstart its investment to overfinance that piece of the work and allow us to move forward with the Lowe's company to build the hotel. So the Live by Lowe's is the 4-star quality hotel. It's a product that we never really had here in Arlington before, and it's been a game changer for us. And it's been a catalyst to the second piece that's now going forward. And then, of course, so in that chronology, if you will, Texas Live in August of 2018, Live by Lowe's opened in August of 2019, and then Globe Life Field technically was supposed to open in March of 2020. There was a little thing called COVID that maybe sidetracked us, but as you can see here, I wanted to use a daytime image because, you know, since the Rangers have been in Arlington, we had only played baseball outdoors until we moved into this building. We can still play baseball outdoors when weather permits. So anybody coming tomorrow night's not going to have to sit in 107-degree heat. You'll have the same air-conditioned comfort tomorrow night. But this is what it looks like for a day game with the roof open at the ballpark. But this is what it looks like for a concert. As we talked about, multi-use. This has been a driving factor for us in everything that we've done. So last year we did 5 major shows here at the ballpark. We have 4 scheduled this year. We played 1 of the 4 so far, and I'll reference those a little later in the presentation. But this is what it looks like. Same facility. You know, you saw that. There's the outdoor baseball look, and there's the look, same space for a concert with 40,000 plus people set up on the field. So that, again, flexibility that we haven't had before, and it's led us to other events. You know, when COVID hit, you know, we knew we were supposed to play a concert here 3 days before everything shut down. And then a few months in, because of the size of the venue, we started to have school districts come to us and say, hey, can we figure out a way to do graduations? So the first year, because we have so much space, we were able to distance people in the seats work closely with the fire marshal to make sure that we're circulating fresh air into the building, which we do every day. Distance our graduates on the lower levels. That first year we did 64 high school graduations, high school and college graduations here. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was a piece of business we never expected to get, but because of COVID, we pivoted and were able to do that. What was interesting to us is we figured it would go away, but come 2021, the districts came back and they said, you know what, we love coming to your building, so can we keep doing this? So this year I think we did 26. UTA now does all of its graduations here. You know, previously they were doing them over College Park Center, but because of capacity of only 7,000, you know, graduates were limited, and same thing with AISD. They were limited on the number of family members they could actually have and come to see this, you know, momentous occasion in a young person's life. So here, you know, we can open the doors as wide as you want to. I think Duncanville stayed with us. I think they have had the biggest classes, usually on the order of 800 or 900, and we'll have 10,000 people here for Duncanville graduations. But Irving ISD, AISD, UTA, spring and winter graduations are all held at the ballpark now. So, and then private events. We're doing now more than 250 private events just like this one every day. So if you may not think of us, you probably think of us just at ballpark, but as you've seen some of the club spaces we'll do, we had a Saturday night last December where we had 8 different holiday parties taking place in the ballpark, separated out in different club spaces. We actually got into the high school prom business, another outgrowth of the COVID here. So it's not unusual for us on Saturday nights in May to have 5 or 6 high school proms going in some of those different club spaces, but all part of that private event that we schedule around baseball. High school football, this number 100 plus includes both Choctaw Stadium and this building. We've actually done more at Choctaw through COVID especially. Big proponents of high school football. And in college baseball games, we've done more than 75. So when you talk about big events, so that 2020 year, we made it through the graduations. We did the most depressing Major League Baseball season in my 38 years with no fans in the stands. You talk about a difficult experience for players, for us. I mean, it was depressing, literally. But because we were able to distance here, and Texas gave us the latitude, the governor's office and our local, health inspectors gave us latitude to distance people, we were able to host the Neutral Site World Series in 2020. Tampa Bay and the Dodgers. So the Dodgers actually won the first World Series. We're hoping to have the Rangers win one out here this year. So hoping to keep that going here. But we hosted that Neutral Site World Series that year, and that sort of led to a chain of events. Later that year in December, Las Vegas couldn't host the National Finals Rodeo. We brought it here to Arlington, worked closely with the state and the Major Event Trust Fund, and we were able to have a great event. We're trying hard to get that one back, and Vegas, I think, has realized that Texas and rodeo seem to work together. So we'll see if we're able to pry it out of Las Vegas, but that was a great experience for us. We had the American Rodeo here last year. And then just looking at that timeline, we had college baseball come in 2021 in the spring, our first concert that year, a college football game, which we had in 21-22, Air Force and Army played here at the ballpark. And then the biggest event we've actually had in the building was a Morgan Wallen concert in November of 22. We had more than 43,000 people for that show. And we were able to set up video boards on the wings. Normally, our concert setup is straight across the field, foul line to foul line. You saw in that first image. We were selling so many tickets for Morgan, and this was his first stadium show, that we actually added 6 sections, 3 on each side, and put up video boards. And he had a thrust, a portion of the stage that came out into the crowd so people could see him even from those wings. So by far, that's the biggest event we've actually hosted here at the ballpark, was Morgan Wallen in November of 22. So this is what the district looks like today, and actually this image is a little incomplete. You can see the new Lowe's Arlington Tower going up, new convention center in the center, a parking garage over on the lower right. In the lower left portion of this, you see what's a remnant of a parking lot, but if you drive out there today, you'll see that there's a new luxury residential apartment complex that's going up. So 300 units that should open in 2025, early 2025. So now we literally have come full circle with live, work, and play here. Whereas before, when you saw that 2012 picture, it was drive in, park your car, go to the game, back in your car, go home. Now we give you that opportunity to maybe enjoy Texas Live before or after, stay overnight if you choose to do so, and pretty soon you can live here if you want to do that too. So Lowe's Arlington, we touched on, we affectionately call that project the Ocho because it will have 888 rooms. Again, Lowe's does not put its name on a hotel unless it is 4-star quality or above. You might have noticed a sky bridge between the two hotels that goes across Randall Mill Road, so that will allow guests, despite the weather, whether warm or cold, to not have to go outside to move between the hotels and the convention space. We're really excited about that. And then the lower image here, One Ranger's Way, that's the residential project. So that is under crane now and is actually now coming vertical up out of the ground, and that gives us the chance to live here. Choctaw Stadium, our former home, we'll talk a little bit about the sports activities that go on there, but we're actually in the process now. I think we just put the signs up the other day. We are actually a Starbucks licensee. So there will be a new Starbucks going in probably at the end of August over on the west face, right across from the new hotel. So for any of you that travel, like I just spent my 5 days in Seattle, what was the first thing I did, right? Where's the closest Starbucks? Well, at least 444 of those 888 guests will be able to look out their window in the morning across the street at beautiful Choctaw Stadium and say, there it is. Place that order. We'll be open 6:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. And, we're in that small business now, Starbucks. And then we're looking actually at a Tex-Mex concept now, too, on that same face, a little closer to first base gate. So, again, we're trying to stimulate some growth and give fans a little bit more than just what you would get at live or at the hotels. If you're in a hotel for a few nights, you're always looking for somewhere else to go. So we are developing this west face of Choctaw Stadium, and there's probably some retail to come behind that too. And if the leasing goes well on the One Ranger's Way project, don't be surprised if we start to look at next phases of residential here. We would love to see more residential growth in the area. So Texas Rangers Golf Club, I just mentioned that. That's a relationship we have with the city. You might remember, for those of you that golf, the Charles Ditto Golf Club over on Brown Boulevard. The city did a massive renovation of that course, spent about $20 million to make it really a first-rate course. In fact, we play a Corn Ferry PGA event there every spring now. They built a new clubhouse, which didn't exist before. We lent our name to it and let the city use the Rangers brand so that we could try to drive business to the course. So that's a partnership. And then the National Medal of Honor Museum, as Michael and some others know, maybe in this room, that really was a labor of love to try to attract that venue, that world-class venue here. And that museum is being built on the other side of the lake, expected to open in early 2025. It came down to Arlington and Denver as the two finalists to secure the Medal of Honor Museum. And we're thrilled to have Chris Cassidy and his team here. There is a rendered view. You can sort of see in the lower right image here, that big block. That'll be actually the display area of the museum. And the architect's design, his thought process was that block is the burden carried by the recipients of the medal. When you think about those who may have lost their lives or who didn't receive that recognition, and they didn't win an award. This is not anything to win in combat, right? But this is the highest medal you can receive for valor in combat. So this is to recognize the recipients of the medal, but also to recognize the burden that they carry going forward, to earn that medal. So it's a really interesting story. I can't wait to get the building open, and I know it's going to be a jewel that we all treasure here in the marquee of Texas. Rev Entertainment, I touched on these guys recently. So I talked about that boat show and 4 people. I'm going to talk about a business that had its own P&L and has now grown. That staff is now up to 35 people. And we branched out to all these different areas now. So Rev, event sales and service, which is what we're doing here today, sports management, food service, production services, and actually development. And we'll touch on a couple of those things today. So we have a young guy named Sean Decker, who's actually the president of that group. And like I say, it's a arm's length company. It's part of the Rangers family, if you will. But he's got his own P&L that he lives and dies on every day, just like every one of you do as small business owners. So, but it's an interesting turn for baseball teams to have gone this route now. And as you'll see in the next few slides, we're starting to get calls from other teams and other municipalities actually trying to replicate what we're doing here in Arlington. So it's been a pretty interesting process for us. Just to sample some of the images you see here from the events we've done, we've touched on a few of these. Baseball, rodeo, meetings, baseball, sports management. So XFL, they had all 8 of their teams were resident here in that first season that Dwayne Johnson brought the XFL back. And then they went out to their markets when they played on the weekends. Of course, we hosted the Arlington Renegades here. The the XFL champions in the first season. And then both Arlington and Houston trained over here at Choctaw Stadium. The other 6 teams were spread around high school facilities here in North Texas to train before they went out on the weekends. But, that's a relationship that was negotiated with Rev to keep those 8 teams here and serve as the training table for them when they're training during the week. Rangers, obviously, Rev has a close relationship there. Dallas Jackals is a rugby team that actually plays at Choctaw Stadium. We manage the venue for those guys. We recently acquired the Cleburne Railroaders. So if you're familiar with the baseball team in Cleburne, we're now operating that facility and owning it and run that venue. Again, it's not Globe Life Field, a few thousand people every night, much smaller scale operation, but it's now being managed by the Rangers and the Rev team. Hickory and Kinston, the lower logos there in the center middle, are 2 minor league teams that we owned in North Carolina. We recently sold the teams, but we kept the food service business. So we're now doing concessions for those 2 minor league clubs as we're trying to grow that part of our business. And again, that's maybe 1,000 to 2,000 people a night. We're dipping our toe in that and learning. We learned a little bit more while we were running the clubs. We sold the teams, but kept the food service. And the North Texas Soccer Club. So FC Dallas has its minor league team, which is North Texas Soccer. They're trying to grow their presence in Tarrant County. So they play over here at Choctaw Stadium too. So we do the management of their games here in addition to the rugby and the high school football and some of those other events we talked about. So food service, production, this is an interesting one. We started a production company for concerts a few years ago. If you ever go onto a baseball stadium particularly, groundskeepers are notoriously protective of their grass. It's rare that they'll let you step on their grass on a baseball field, let alone the players getting out there. So for concerts, they put a material down called TerraTrack. That's one of the products. So a few years ago, we were in the process of actually leasing that product, and there was a guy named Tony, and Tony lived in Longview, and Tony was recognized around the country as the preeminent guy to install this surface. So after a few years of paying Tony to come over here and do that, Sean finally went to Tony and said, Tony, we're going to hire you and bring you onto our payroll and be part of our team and go out and do these installations across the country. So Tony had a few associates he worked with. We now have an East Coast guy, a West Coast guy, and Tony's here in the center. Last year alone, we did 97 installations of flooring for concerts across the country. We've got the entire Kenny Chesney tour under contract for next year. We did 13 of those in Arlington, 11 were in Houston, 10 in Los Angeles. So we literally now functioning this small company coast to coast, and we just sort of broker the deals. This product just moves in advance of the tours, and Tony or a member of his staff now goes in and does the installations, and then we sort of support Tony. And Sean's been out there sourcing other product from vendors who manufacture this stuff so that we can have more capacity. But anytime you see a concert at Minute Maid Park, we do the flooring. St. Louis, we do the flooring. As you see in Los Angeles, when the Dodgers do a show, it's actually Rev Events and Rev Production Services that's actually doing that flooring now. So again, another small business under that Rev umbrella. And the development piece, this has been pretty interesting in the past year. We've been contacted by a couple of municipalities about trying to do, on smaller scale, what we've done here in Arlington. So we're not a traditional developer. We use sports as the anchor. You might see a town center somewhere or, a traditional mall, even though there are fewer and fewer of those, but we try to use sports as the anchor. So specifically now, we have an agreement with the city of Shreveport, Louisiana. So anybody who's driven along I-20 and knows the Independence Bowl there, you may or may not know there's also a Coliseum there, Hirsch Coliseum, and they had an old baseball stadium they were in the process of tearing down. But we got connected with the city last year. We've gone through a mayoral transition there, but the new mayor has now picked up the mantle and is working with us, having a feasibility study done now, and we're looking to revitalize this 137-acre site along I-20. And our concept is to try to bring the baseball over closer to the other activations. I don't know if you've ever been to the Independence Bowl, but when you enter that place on the east side, there literally are livestock pens that are 20 feet from the doors to the stadium. So not the best fan experience, if you will. So our thought is let's move the rodeo a little further east and see if we can get baseball over there. And then in that area between the football stadium, the Coliseum, and the new baseball stadium, let's put the entertainment. So they're very interested in a model similar to Texas Live Hotel. There's a large medical facility just to the east. and they've said that they need housing for their residents, and they'd like to see some improvements in that area. And then we're not going to forget about the State Fair of Louisiana or the rodeo. We're just going to move those assets over to the east side there and see if we can make that all work. So this is about a $105 million project, at least in this first phase. So we're in discussions with the city now to try to get that done. And then in Leland, North Carolina, we've got a developer there who's got land, so we're working with the county and city government to try to do something similar. This is proposed at about $115 million. The developer would like a baseball stadium to be the center of this new residential community he wants to build. So we've been going through diligence there with the city, trying to get that work and reimagining the site. Of course, our expertise is we have agreements, we would reach agreements and bring in the teams. And then we would operate the venues and not only program just the baseball, but like we've done here, look for opportunities to activate 365 days a year. So, we're hoping that both Shreveport and Leland will get going here in the next year once we finish our diligence. Everybody seems to be on board. And then we've got other communities have actually reached out to us. I mean, as far away as Hawaii. Sean is actually going to the Bahamas next week. Believe it or not, we've been contacted by the Minister of Sports there to potentially run a few of their sports venues for the country. So it's been an interesting paradigm shift for us. A few venues here in Texas, a few communities here in Texas have reached out. So, but this is all under that REV umbrella, and I would tell you that each one of those, we're looking at them as small, independent, small businesses. And it's really fascinating to us to see how that has come together. So for you small business owners out there, we certainly appreciate that, and we're in the same boat as you are trying to make this work. I mentioned concerts. We've got 4 scheduled in the building this year. We think next year is going to be a better stadium year for concerts, so we'll see how that plays out. We've played one of the shows so far, the Twice concert, which is a K-pop act. We're here in June. We got the Jonas Brothers coming up on August 30th. So anybody wants to see Jonas Brothers, and then Brandy Carlisle and Pink on September 29th. And the next day, RBD, which is a Hispanic act, and that show sold out in a half a day. So we're really excited about that. It's the first time we've had a Hispanic show here, and we're really looking forward to hosting that. So the concert business is, it ebbs and flows. We didn't get Taylor Swift. We were here playing the Phillies that weekend. Everybody would love to have Taylor Swift. We sort of got the afterglow, I guess, if you will. It's been was interesting to have her here with our opening weekend, that same weekend. So for anybody who was here on that Saturday night for the Taylor Swift Rangers show, I apologize. Wasn't the way we wanted it to go, but it all worked. I think everybody saw a great show at AT&T Stadium and a really good show here in the ballpark too. So concerts to come more this year. So that's all I've got in terms of my presentation. Like I say, I would tell you that when I started in baseball 38 years ago in Houston, we were probably about a $2 billion industry, I think, at that time. I think we went between 1 and 2. We were sort of characterized at that time as a business too big to be small and too small to be big as an industry. Now, of course, baseball has grown exponentially in that time, and fortunately, we've made some adjustments this year for the better that are bringing our fans back and keeping them more engaged in the game. And now we're probably closer to a $9 to $10 billion industry across our 30 clubs. But as we function here locally, let's be honest, we had 6 pretty bad seasons before this year. So we're thrilled with the investment that ownership has made in players. It's obviously produced in the manager, and it's producing on the field. But we're very much, I was talking to Michael about this briefly. I guess we're probably more of a mid-sized business based on the numbers that we generate as an individual. But, we have to make it work on our own. And trust me, our owners very much, it's very much dependent on our ability to sell tickets, to sell sponsorships, food and beverage, parking, everything that we do to generate revenue. The Rangers have a standalone P&L just like our Rev partners do too. So we very much operate in the world that you function in. And like I say, we've had 6 lean years. And I will tell you that the numbers we're able to do in this building compared to what we did at Choctaw Stadium is just amazing sometimes. You see that we have franchises in Oakland and Tampa that still struggle a little bit to this day. So we're fortunate to be in a great market. We're fortunate to work with great people here in Texas. But believe me, we're all operating on that same P&L that you guys do. So I appreciate and admire small business owners because I know what it takes to, I don't know how you do it, entrepreneurs, and I'm seeing some really familiar faces out in the crowd. I admire your courage to take that step forward and do what you do. Anything we can do here to help too, like I said, I'm on the chamber board, I'm on the CVB board. I'm just R. Matwick at TexasRangers.com. I think just about everybody in the city probably has my business card by now. So anything, and with the All-Star game coming next year, we're working closely with some of the minority diversity supplier councils, the Arlington Black Chamber, our Hispanic and Asian American chambers, to try to look for opportunities to get more small businesses engaged as we start to build out All-Star Week for next year. So more to come on that. We actually have Commissioner Manfred coming in next week to do sort of a kickoff for us because we are on the clock now here in Arlington. So we've got a big year ahead, but thank you so much for all of you visiting here today. I'll hang around. If anybody's got any questions for me, feel free to stop by and say hello. Thank you for your time and attention. Like I say, Michael convinced me. I've never really done a keynote speech before, and I don't really know what that means. So I will say you get what you pay for. Right, Mike? So hopefully I didn't bore you too much here, but it's been a fascinating transformation here to see this get going in Arlington, and I hope each of you has an opportunity to come and enjoy it with us. So thanks so much. Appreciate it, guys.